Hello again, and welcome to another edition of Arts and Ideas. I'm Sue Swinand, and today, between snowstorms, we're over on the College of the Holy Cross campus at the Cantor Art Gallery, and they have a new show of work by studio faculty artists called Pulse, and it really is a very outstanding and engaging show, and it's going to be here until April 15th of 2015. So you have plenty of time to come over and see the show, which I guarantee you will enjoy. I am delighted to have as my guest today Michael Beatty, who is in this faculty show, and I'm really looking forward to showing you his work, and thank you for being here with us.
My pleasure,
and sharing the work with our audience. I would want to say that the show was curated by Roger Hankins and also installed by him and Tim Johnson, who is his loyal and worthy installer.
Well, and an artist in his own right.
And they're both in this show, so come and see what they've been doing. Now, Michael has quite an interesting background. He has an MFA from Mass College of Art, 1995. And what did you major in?
I studied sculpture there.
Sculpture?
So, yes.
And then your undergraduate degree?
My undergraduate degree is from the University of Kansas, and there I actually studied printmaking and painting.
So he covers all the bases. He really does a wide range of works. And I'm going to just read you a few things that I wanted to mention. He's represented by the Barbara Krakow Gallery in Boston, where he exhibits frequently. And he has had 2 residencies at the MacDowell Colony in New Hampshire. He was a visiting scholar at the American Academy in Rome. And he's had many museum shows, the Berkshire Museum, Fuller Museum, De Cordova Museum, Fitchburg Museum. And of course, he's included in collections like the De Cordova and the Fogg Museum at Harvard University. So, he's also on the faculty at Holy Cross. So what is your position here?
Right, so I'm teach sculpture and 3D design primarily. Also, I teach our senior seminar, which is for our senior majors. That's a really culminating experience, and they get their own studios on campus and work for the year to have a show here in the gallery. So it's a great class to teach.
And how long have you been at Holy Cross?
I've been at Holy Cross longer than I can, 18 years, I think.
Woo!
So, yes,
wow,
amazing.
that's wonderful.
Yeah.
Well, they're lucky to have you.
And well, and what I do, I love teaching in a liberal arts environment, and that's really why I think I've stayed here, in part because the students, they're not all art majors, and they have diverse backgrounds, diverse things they're studying, and they can bring that to their ideas and to the work that they make in classes.
A lot of the colleges are doing interdisciplinary thinking on a lot of the...
You know, absolutely. A lot's going on Holy Cross right now. There's a program called Arts Transcending Borders, where we bring in a visiting artist for a year and then work across disciplines. I just taught in a class called Create Lab, which was 8 professors, 70 students throughout the syllabus, and just tried to teach creative thinking across all these disciplines.
And that really stretches you.
It does. It was, I think, and perhaps the faculty enjoyed the class just as much as the students.
Do you ever have a book? I was thinking about this for my own benefit, but is there a book that you have had that influenced your thinking that you recommend to students?
Well, lots of readings, and you know, one thing that I like to look at art through the lens of some other kinds of writers. So Paul Bloom has a book out called How Pleasure Works. He's a psychologist at Princeton, I believe. That's a book that I really recommend that students read, because it's much broader based than just about art, but it kind of tries to connect art to performance and sports. It's an interesting book.
Yeah, I think I've heard of that one. Thank you. And I have to admit, still curious about the 3-dimensional printing, which
right, that's a new thing that I'm just adding to the curriculum right now. We do have a 3D printer on campus. We actually have 2, but the one that I have access to, I'll use that in my intro to sculpture classes. I'll be teaching the students how to use that. It's an exciting new technology for making sculptural works.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And these are examples,
And
are
exactly,
they not?
I'm using it quite a bit in my own work right now. So.
Is that something new for you, since you
it's
have
new.
it available here at Holy Cross?
I've used it before. It's new, but I've always used the computer as a tool to kind of visualize my work. So it was just a little bit further step to take those files and then actually have them made into objects.
Wow. So let's talk about these a little bit, and maybe you can tell the audience a little bit more about how they're made and so on.
Right. Well, what we're looking at here is a group called Prototypes, and really these are like little studies or sketches that I make in between some of the larger work. If I get frustrated, I'll work on these smaller ones. And what I like about them is their proportion. Sculpture is always proportioned to the body in some way, and these are these kind of pieces that you can hold in your hands, right?
Are these meant to be prototypes for larger works?
Not necessarily. I think more theoretical, right? They could be made larger scale, but I'm thinking of them as just kind of, they're almost my drawings in a funny way, a three-dimensional drawing. And the computer, when these are printed out, it thinks about them that way. It actually breaks everything up into striations and then builds it up that way.
Well, they are very intimate. You do want to have one. You want to have one.
Yeah, no, I think any object, draws your tactile attention. What we call a haptic response. Your body kind of responds to this thing that you want to touch. Yeah. But part of what I'm doing in these works is I'm sort of contrasting many kind of ideas or ways of working. So there's this virtual idea, the way that the computer sees things and builds things, and then there's the handmade element, right? So there's those two kind of contradictions. What does it mean to make something by hand? What does it mean to make it by machine? The forms are also, kind of opposites, right? The wooden parts are kind of these closed, solid forms. The printed out things are these very skeletal, open forms. So that's something that I've always been interested in. These kind
I
of
love that juxtaposition of the opposite kind of feeling and thought. And we were talking a little bit about symmetry, and I loved your quote about the boringness of symmetry.
Well, don't rest on the bosom of symmetry is the quote, I think.
Don't rest on the bosom of symmetry.
And because yes, you need something. We're symmetrical.
Symmetry gives you structure and
it gives you structure. It gives you order, but not to rely on it too much.
Well, it's funny. This part is the part printed out by the computer, of course. And you said this is like a molten plastic when it prints out.
Right.
But you would think that the computer would print out something symmetrical, but obviously it's programmed to print out whatever shape you.
Right.
It almost looks like when it printed out, it wobbled a little bit. Like a ceramic that was too wet or something.
Right. That's me doing that in the computer and controlling. The computer's just another tool for artists to use, right?
Yes.
It's not going to save the world. But for me, I used the computer originally to kind of visualize ideas. And then, when I realized that I could print those files out, it opened up a whole new territory for me. And these are things that are kind of too complicated to actually make. I wouldn't know how to make those things by hand.
Yes.
But the computer lets me sort of visualize them and see them. I can imagine them, but it now gives me an opportunity to actually bring them to a real
And they're very
object.
durable, too, in that media, are they not?
Yeah, they are. Oh, absolutely.
So obviously this part is made with a lathe.
Right.
And so it has the beautiful symmetry. And so students are doing these...
They're just beginning to sort of see this. This actually, the hard part of this is learning the program behind it all.
Yes.
The other thing that I would just say about these is the fact that these two materials are also kind of in contrast to each other.
I
one
love
very
that
sort
this
of
is
technological.
it's laminated
Right, it's laminated in the same way,
yeah.
like the computer sees these files. Yeah, actually,
like the layers.
Stacking.
But that
stacking.
also gives it all that beautiful patterning and color variation and the straight line of that perfect circle, as opposed to that random loose form of the top. Well, let's look at another one. This is a great piece, Michael. What is the title?
Well, this is called Past, Future, Perfect, and it's a new work of mine, so I'm excited about it. I mean, the title sort of refers to that verb tense in English, and it's, you know, should have, would have, but the piece is a little bit about hindsight, about looking back at things, and kind of a lamentation maybe for things that haven't gone the way you hoped they would, but also very affirmative about things that have happened. So it's slightly dysfunctional table, really, right?
The work is really quite conceptual, isn't it?
Right. I mean, well, there are certainly ideas embedded in the work, and that's the thing. Even though part of my background is from sort of the craft world. I mean, I studied furniture making, I studied paper making, so I bring those skills and those ways of working, but to sculpture, to the idea. And in this piece, you know, I literally have made, I guess, a table, but it's also not a table. So that automatically that puts you in this state of not knowing quite what you're looking at.
And a little bit of the unexpected, a little bit of surprise.
Right. Or the uncanny, even, we can say, where you can't just quite identify what the piece is about. For me, the work, you know, there are some autobiographical elements to it. The turned post here is exactly my height, so sometimes I use scale in a way that will mirror myself in the piece. And the piece is there's a little bit of kind of history built in, right? You have this sort of 18th century turning, meeting this steel leg that is sort of mid-century modern, another time that I really admire the work and design work that was built during then, and even this sort of postmodern little element here. So it's this clash of ideas over time coming together. And then for me, this kind of hole in the table that comes down is really almost more like a little solar system or a black hole, right? You're sort of sucked into it, a vortex.
Yeah, you know, even this leg is even back to the earlier primitive.
Yeah,
so
sure, working. I mean,
history.
You have to think that this is all made from natural materials primarily, and so you know, plywood comes from this tree, but you know, it's recapitulated. We don't understand that. We actually don't think about these things as being connected sometimes.
Yes. And this so elegant, yet made out of plywood with those beautiful decreasing rings as it goes into the vortex.
I've used that material. I use plywood quite a bit because of that stacked layer and the sort of, when you cut into it,
and the
kind
patterning.
of patterning you get.
Well, let's look at some from the other series now.
Okay.
Well, you've seen a few of his sculptures. Now, I'd really like to show you some of his drawings. He works in many media, so let's show the audience a few of these.
Yeah, I'll say, I mean, drawing is really the essential means for me to start the work or to begin the work. I mean, drawing is really important to my studio practice.
So you do drawings for all of the sculptures first?
Yeah, everything, I think, starts out as a drawing at some point along the way. I mean, what we're looking at here are some monotypes that I made that use these same kind of wire form shapes. And what was interesting is I had just recently sort of rediscovered these, or looked back at them and realized how much they resonated with the work that I'm making now.
Oh, definitely. Definitely.
And they're a series that's titled Plato's Chalkboard, which is a little bit of a heavy-handed title, but Plato never drew anything out. He only wrote it out, and he has these very, very complicated books in which, you know, in the Timaeus, particularly, where he's trying to talk about the cosmology of the world, but there's no pictures. It's so frustrating. So I wanted to give some pictures to Plato's book. And here's another one that we can see. So again, these are these floating shapes. The other thing that's interesting about these for me is sculpture is so much grounded in gravity and the physicality of the work, the materiality of the work. But in a drawing, there is no gravity, and it can be free, and things can float around in space, and so that can be very refreshing and enjoying.
I love the way the sculptures, though, the little ones behind us, the way they all seem to be tipping and active.
Right, there's a sense of trying to create that atmosphere.
They're
even
definitely
in the static.
having that feeling of restlessness.
Right, yes, right.
But these are so structural, you know, they're showing structures that upon which the universe is built. Okay.
Right. And similar, these forms have translated into larger drawings. I mean, I've done some large-scale wall drawings, and here you're seeing a sort of me in the mid-process here.
Oh my word! It's like being in the outer atmosphere, the outer.
Right. There's a sense
of
cosmology. I mean, I'm very interested in that intersection of art and science. A lot of these images actually come from some of the early photographs from the Hubble telescope. You know, I was looking at that and being very inspired by those.
Are these chalk on the wall?
This is chalk on the wall, and again, this is, that's the way that we've learned, at least the way that the Academy has taught students for so long, the writing on the chalkboard. I used to always love that, going into a classroom and sort of seeing everything that was written and erased. And so I sort of took that idea to recreate these drawings.
They always talk about drawing as being the most direct connection to the thought.
Right.
Because
I think
I love that
true.
Little floating
and then
shape
you have a little,
in the background.
yes,
The way light is emanating from it.
Right.
Okay.
And now we're going to a very, very different kind of drawings, and these are certainly more recent, and they kind of relate to the next body of sculpture that we'll see. But these are,
you could almost think that was a sculpture.
Well, exactly. And in fact, the drawings came first, and then I really sort of translated them into sculptures. I had actually been in Rome. That was when I had been in Rome, and I was looking at all these old floor plans of different churches and buildings in Rome, and that's where the idea came from.
I see that.
To make these drawings. And they're sort of based on equivalence. You know, the architectural line is equal to the curvilinear line. In
so
length.
the black geometric is the same measurement as the curve.
Right. So there's an internal sort of logic going on here.
Again, the very conceptual.
Mm-hmm. And that's another one. So yeah, graphite and gouache are the two things. And then here you see translated as a sculpture.
Oh, this is a sculpture right here.
This is a sculpture, not a drawing.
You can see the shadows on the wall, of course.
Yeah. So, and the title, Same Difference, is trying to get at that idea that these are equivalent structures.
It's also very, I think, very poetic to have that sort of contrast of extreme differences and yet have a synthesis of opposite.
Yeah, so you know, a lot of people...
Are these metal then?
Right, welded steel and then bent wood.
Wood and metal, it's just phenomenal.
I mean, I studied crafts and making, and I take those, you know, those things like woodworking, boat building, metal fabrication, those skills, which are sort of...
And you do it yourself?
I do it myself, yes.
Yes.
But I take those in the service of sculptural ideas.
Yes.
That's the way that I'd like to say
Sure.
that. And then here's just another view of it, just to, you know, you can see.
Look at how perfectly that wood is bent. Is that laminated wood as well?
Right, that's, there are 3 ways you can bend wood. You can actually grow the tree, and they used to do that when they built boats.
I know, you do the wrapping and...
Right,
yeah.
pull the tree and make it grow. But these are what are called bent laminations, so thin strips of wood glued together and then bent over a form. Not wet.
Wet?
No, just glued over a form. We'll see how it's done in a little bit more, but...
Okay.
This is another piece that's slightly different. It's entitled Full Circle. And really what I sometimes do, I'm really interested in sort of biological form, biological function, and sort of meshing or making these hybrid objects that are somewhat between that and a tool or a model, a scientific model. And this is actually a model of the heart. Broken down. It's a continuous line. It's sort of how your arteries and veins come through your heart.
How the blood would flow.
Right. So full circle.
Beautiful.
And the center of it is just that little tiny metal contraption that kind of holds the wood in place.
again, I think the metal going against the wood adds a lot to the piece, visually and conceptually.
This is actually a whole other series, a kind of an older series that I started in 1998, but I continue to work on it today. I continue to make these forms, which are called blips. And what I like about them is they're sort of small and contained. Originally, they were inspired by images from the Hubble telescope. They're made of graphite, and then they actually draw on the wall. You can move them, so it's a sculpture that draws.
I love that. So in other words, the shape, which is somewhat bulbous, there are different parts of these bulbs which contact the wall.
I think we might
and
have
when
an
they
image,
rotate, they write on the wall in different areas. So, but you have some that have double bumps, and the bumps will make different circles, really. Yeah. Beautiful, beautiful. And so the outsides are rubbed with graphite?
Right, they're again a lathe-turned object, and then
so it's
covered.
A wood.
It's
These
wood.
are wood.
Yes, they are wood, and then covered with graphite.
They look like metal, of course.
They do, yes.
You know, my thought about these was they're so geometric and so perfect. They're absolutely perfect in that sense that they feel more like mathematics and geometry than they do, you know, when I first looked at them, I thought they looked very organic, but they're so perfect.
Right, they're sort of between those two things, you know, and I'm always trying to find that sort of balance between these dualism or dialectics, but try to bring it together. I'm not really trying to talk about the opposites. I'm trying to talk about that things, the whole is made up of parts. It's made up of these contradictory forces.
Okay.
And we could talk a little bit about just my working process if you'd be interested.
Definitely.
You know, so I do start out, I always have a sketchbook with me and make drawings, initial drawings, very quick little pencil drawings. And then from there, I will take some of those ideas and actually draw them in the computer. So what you're looking at here is just a digital model. And
so this does not exist in real life, except on the computer.
It's a virtual sculpture.
I wouldn't have known that.
What it helps me do is visualize the work, and because it's in a 3D program, I can move around it.
You can look at it from different angles.
Yeah, exactly.
Awesome.
Take it from different
Wonderful.
angles. And then, unfortunately, what happens is I try to build that thing.
And then you realize that wasn't quite possible.
Right, and so it changes. It changes again in the making process. And I typically use, again, laminated bent wood.
This is your studio.
This is the studio, right?
Wow.
So,
oh my goodness, how many clamps do you have?
I have a lot of clamps. You know, I come out of this tradition of woodworking. My father actually was a set designer in the theater department, so I learned from a really young age how to work with wood and materials. And it really wasn't until after undergraduate that I began to really make a lot of sculpture. So
these are so fluid. They're like a whirlwind, or
well, they're like a drawing in space,
exactly,
right? It's like drawing with the material now.
Exactly.
So that's another thing
to make wood be like a ribbon in the wind is amazing.
Right. And then I think here's just another little detail shot. So it's a lot of clamping and playing with the material, a lot of give and take in the process. I'm very process oriented, and I don't have to make it look like what the drawing just gets me started, right? And then I can make the changes as I'm developing the work.
And you can see like 6 or 7 layers of the wood laminate there. And what kind of wood is that?
That's actually a bendable plywood. So,
wow.
And then here's what the piece became. It's called Circuitous Route. And what happened, this was actually shown at Boston Sculptors, which is a wonderful cooperative gallery in downtown Boston.
Excellent.
I was a member there for many years.
I think I've seen your work there too.
This is the final piece, and I was actually hoping that it would sort of stand on its own, but when it was so kind of large scale that it needed these aluminum supports in there, and I was actually happy with that I didn't plan or didn't anticipate, but I sort of like that it's a sculpture that's trying to stand up and fall down at the same time.
Yes, you had this one, I think, here once, didn't you?
Yes, actually, I think that's right.
I saw that one a few years ago.
Has been shown in a couple places.
Okay.
And then from that same show, this piece called The Trouble with Painting.
I love this piece. I don't know why I love it so much. And
well, it's a square, right? It's a square that's been twisted and folded up. And the title, a little bit tongue-in-cheek, refers to Barnett Newman's quote that sculpture is something you back into when you're looking at a painting.
That's one of my favorite quotes.
Yeah, well, one of my favorite. But you know, he's putting forth the supremacy of painting over all other media.
And how do you feel about painting?
Oh, I love painting. I have no problem with that.
Do you do a lot of painting?
I don't really paint. I wouldn't say I paint. I draw and
you love it to look at, but not to do.
Yes, and I certainly would not be as dictatorial as Barnett Newman was.
Oh, he knew everything.
But you know, my title is tongue-in-cheek. It's the trouble with painting is just that it's flat, it's illusionary. It's doesn't exist in the same space that we do. And that's the thing that sculpture can do. Sculpture exists where we exist.
When he says this is a square and a circle, do you notice that the four corners are right angles?
Right,
so,
and they're just all twisted. It's just
so
twisted.
the little legs of the square are all twisted.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, beautiful.
And then this is really, I think, the show at Barbara Krakow Gallery, who represents my work in Boston. And
how long have you been with Krakow?
I've shown there for almost 15 years now, I think.
It's a wonderful gallery. Don't miss it when you go into Boston to look at artwork. It's always well worth your effort.
Mm-hmm. This last work are these, I call them cross-sections, but they're based on sort of CAT scans of the brain, if you can imagine.
Oh,
that's where the
I didn't know
imagery
that.
comes from.
Yeah, this was shown at Clark University, I remember.
Right. This was at the show at Clark, and they've been
so
shown
those are the
here.
laminated wood?
Again, using plywood and the idea that you can get these striations of line or laminations together. And then, you know, they're sort of shown in a larger installation.
Oh, they're beautiful. Color is not your thing that you rely on most, I think.
No, but
these are very
needed,
subtle.
Right, these needed color, and there's a sense that they look like flowers as well. I understand that, but so do, if you look at CAT scans of brains, they have this kind of undulating. So trying to make all those connections.
Beautiful. Well, gosh, I've enjoyed hearing about it, and I wish I could hear more because it's fascinating. But thanks again for joining us, and I think that's all we have time for today. So thank you for joining us, and we hope to see you another time for another edition of Arts and Ideas.